tonight. We have some presentations that we're going to do before we open the meeting. Ronnie, our emergency group, have been doing some great stuff. So if you want to come up and tell us what's been going on and what we can all be proud of.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners, and John. I appreciate y'all's time tonight and letting us come and share with you a success that we had, and to recognize all the people that were involved in that. You know, sometimes at the end of the day, we might wonder if we really made a difference in maybe somebody's life that day by something that we done or said, and oftentimes we don't always know that. We can't know that sometimes, the influence that we have on people's lives. We, in Mr. Brown's situation, Mr. Brown's with us tonight. I'm going to get him and his wife's here, get them up here in a minute and tell about what happened to him on May 26. But we were able to make a difference in his life, and we can see the results of that by him being here tonight with us. Y'all heard me say many times up here that we can't take credit for what happens oftentimes, because it's not always in our hands. We do the best we can with the talents and things that God gives us, but it don't always turn out the way that we want it to. And the Bible says that really well in Psalms. It says that except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain that build it. So we appreciate him honoring our efforts, and we're blessed to be a part of that. Mr. Brown had a cardiac arrest on May 26th. His heart stopped and he stopped breathing. And I went out yesterday and visited Mr. Brown. We sat on the porch, talked together, talked about what had happened, talked about his family and his children and grandchildren, his son and some of his other children were there, got to meet them. You can tell he's a family man. He's proud of his children and what they've done and accomplished. He was telling me some of those things. And his son, his daughter and granddaughter. And before I left, some friends came by, took my place on the porch and was sitting there talking to him when I left. So he's well thought of. I thought to myself while I was sitting there looking at all that going on that, you know, what would he be missing? What would the family be missing had things not turned out the way they did? He told me about a cookout that they'd had, the family had had the night before, in celebration, I believe, was his granddaughter's graduation, and how that he had grilled everything, and it kind of sound like that he's kind of a master at grilling. And, you know, I hope to experience that in person soon. I kind of hinted at that while I was out there. But on May 26th, on that morning, he and his wife got up and started the church. And they was coming down Church Street, headed into town. And he said the last thing that he remembers was passing Jack Peters' store out there on Church Street. The next thing he remembers was waking up in the hospital 4 days later with his family gathered around his bedside. And a lot had gone on in those 4 days that he didn't know about while he was resting. But the family was there with him, I'm sure, praying for him and doing what they could. But as he was going down the road, Mr. Brown's heart stopped beating, and he stopped breathing. And Miss Brown said that she looked over at him, and he was slumped over the steering wheel. And she said at that point she thought she was going to have a heart attack, but she didn't. She tried to get the car stopped but couldn't get to the brakes. She grabbed the steering wheel because it was headed toward one of the houses there on Church Street, and she got it steered away and They ran over a fire hydrant and then hit a tree. And Miss Brown was injured. She has a broken arm because of the accident. But Mr. Brown at that point had no pulse and was not breathing. And this story might have had a tragic ending except for what happened next. There was a gentleman that had happened by and saw the crash. He was a paramedic in Greene County, and he's with us tonight. I'm going to ask him just a second to come up and tell about how he ended up over there where he was at, because he don't normally come that way. But he was right there and jumped out and started to render aid. Pulled Mr. Brown out of the car, started CPR, and I'll let him tell the story, but he's with us tonight. I'm going to ask him to come up here. It's Mr. Chris Mobley. We're glad he took time to come by. He just met Mr. Brown tonight when he come up. Mr. Brown didn't remember him, but after all was going on. So come in and tell him what all went on that morning, that day.
Good evening. My name's Chris. I don't public speak, so I'm sorry. But that morning I got off of work, Greene County EMS. I'm a paramedic there. I was headed to church. I attend the Monroe Church of God there on Church Street. I normally come up through Madison, come up 83 through Good Hope and come to church. And for some reason that morning, when I put in my GPS to find out what time I was going to be there for practice, it had me going up through Rutledge, I think. And I thought, well, that's weird. I'll just go on the way I normally go. So I got on I-20 and I was listening to music going down the road. And I drove right past Madison like it wasn't even there. I said, well, I guess I'm going a long way. So I went all the way down, caught up, come up Highway 11 and come through town. And I rode up and I actually passed by, I think right about the time they stopped moving when they hit the tree. And so that don't look right. And I didn't realize at first it was an accident. I thought a tree had fallen on the truck, and I could tell it was steaming. So I got out to check on them, make sure they were okay, and realized Mr. Brown was not breathing, wasn't talking, and Miss Brown was in the passenger seat, and I could tell she was hurt. I could tell he was sick. He was real sick. So managed to get the door open and pulled him out and started CPR on him. A law enforcement officer got there and helped do CPR, and I remembered that I had a Lucas device in my truck. For those of you that don't know, that's a mechanical CPR device that you can put on. They're kind of expensive. It's not normal for somebody to have one. I was actually loaning that one from Stryker to do a class, and I still had it with me. I hadn't had a chance to give it back. And so put the Lucas on. Fire department got there, put the AED on him, and the rest of the folks got there. They did a fantastic job. You know, there's been a lot said about me being there, whether it would have changed anything. I'm reminded of Proverbs, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your path. Sometimes he redirects you and puts you out of the way you normally go, and that might be to put you in the way to help somebody else. And I believe that's what happened. And Mr. Brown, I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you get to see your grandbabies.
Thank you, Chris. Seems like everything just kind of fell in place that day and worked out for the best. I'm gonna ask Mr. Brown. He stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks before he got out, but he's doing great. And I'm gonna ask him to come up here right now and meet some of the other rescuers that were out there today. This is Mr. Brown and his wife. Now, she was injured in the accident. She's still in a little cast there, but she says she's doing okay. Just stay right here and I'll get you to it. But I'm going to get to, we thank y'all for coming tonight, taking time to come and helping us recognize these fellows, men and women that helped you out that day. And I'm going to call up Sarah O'Shea and Curtis Pounds. They were the paramedics on the ambulance that day. And they came out and they took care of Mr. Brown after the initial. Y'all just line up right there in front if you want to. This is Curtis and this is Sarah Shea and Curtis Pounds, and they work with us, Walton County EMS. Mr. Brown, they shocked him, I think, a total of 7 times on the way to the hospital, trying to get his heart stabilized. They gave him medication to help do that, to help restore his pulse and put it in an airway so they could breathe for him, and transported him to the hospital. And it was after he got to the hospital that he regained a pulse. And I was looking at the trip report today, and it looks to me kind of like that he was without a pulse for somewhere around 50 minutes. And that's truly a miracle that he survived that, but he did. I'm going to ask that fire department come up, the Monroe Fire Department. They was there. Y'all fellas come up and stand next to them. I got all of them's names that was supposed to be in here, but is everybody here that was coming, or missing anybody?
We missed one.
Okay, I'm just going to call out the names that I got, because Austin White, Luke Morrell, Brandon Maxey, Jonathan Laughlin, Branson Oliver, Dave Novak, and TJ Hamill. And they were all working at Monroe Fire Department today and came out and helped us out.